Growing up, it was made clear to me that if you didn't have your life together by the time you were 40, you were a failure. Now, no one ever said it, but it was implied, especially if you were a woman. If you didn't have a husband or children, or you were still figuring out your career or changing careers, you were all over the place, and the people who love you should just give up on having any expectation that you'll turn into anything. You absolutely cannot be happy with the way your life has turned out, right? And ultimately, you've wasted your potential. Imagine what I felt when life didn't turn out quite how I expected, and I found myself faced with either staying in a state of unhappiness or starting over. Though I'm not quite 40, it is approaching quickly, and though I know I don't feel like what I understood growing up is true for me, I definitely battled with the programming and conditioning that took place at an early age, whether intentional or not. So what brought about this need to start over? To put it as simply as I can, it was a dark night of the soul that I experienced about a year ago, a time in my life where I had to make a conscious and intentional choice about where my life goes next. It was literally do or die for me. If you're unfamiliar with what a dark night of the soul is, it's used to describe an extremely difficult and painful period in one's life. For me, it was the events that led to the end of a 7-year dysfunctional relationship, of which I will spare you the details for public consumption, but I will say it was a severe and horrific experience. And because of this life-changing event, I had to face that I am an unwed mother of 2 Black boys approaching 40, who now has to learn to co-parent while healing from a traumatic situation. And as I look at my life, I realized that the relationship was just the tip of the iceberg, that there were many areas of my life that I was dissatisfied with. As a matter of fact, there wasn't really any area of my life I was happy with. I was operating in mediocrity, to say the least. I wasn't living at my full potential in work, as a parent, in business, as a daughter, in health, and in lifestyle, in my home. I really didn't know what it meant to love someone, despite desperately wanting to, so something had to change. After 6 months of doing some deep reflection, answering some very hard questions, and taking accountability for my part in getting to where I was, I decided to do something drastic and radical. I quit my job and took a 6-month self-paced sabbatical to figure out what I wanted, and I told no one. So many of us are a product of what was taught and demonstrated to us, even when we grow up and understand that it doesn't work. Without conscious shift of our behavior, without conscious unlearning, we end up perpetuating what we learned even when we don't want to. And if we've also been taught we're supposed to fulfill the societal pressures imposed on us, then we cause socially acceptable acts of self-harm against ourselves that can take years to unravel. If you're familiar with my podcast, you've heard me go in depth about burning your sash, which stands for socially acceptable acts of self-harm. It was probably one of the first episodes of Juicy Femininity for Black Girls back in 2020. But here I was, end of 2021, having to remind myself of this and take my own advice. During my sabbatical, I thought about what skills I had or wanted to develop that could help me reach my goals of less stress, slowing down, homeschooling, and time freedom. And the skills that I invested my time and effort into were coaching skills, project management skills, and sales skills. These were the skills that I already had practice in. The skill that I wanted to learn was technical skills. Because when I thought about reasons I would go back to work, I felt the only way I would do that is if I was able to work in tech. When I quit my job, I was literally taking a leap of faith. My only strategy was taking action every single day. And by doing that, information and opportunities presented themselves. And it's true that when you make yourself available and you are searching for answers to your problems, solutions will present themselves. I started to see information about tech boot camps, and I passed on a few because they weren't the right fit for one reason or another. Eventually, I found one that was perfect because it aligned with the life I wanted to create, and so I signed up. A few times throughout my journey, I wondered, am I changing or am I coming back to myself? Am I doing something new or am I reminding myself of who I am? And sometimes I don't know. I've forgotten myself on my quest for more at times, sometimes without realizing it, and other times leaving parts of myself behind in hopes that I'll return and ultimately forgetting to. Now, I could spend time wrestling with this. I could mourn, but what good would that do? Instead, I think about what I want my life to look like, and I only make choices that align with that most of the time. My mindset on work is to work to live, right? I no longer am willing to live for work. Work is not my life. It is a tool for creating the life that I want. So recently I accepted a tech position that will almost triple my salary. And I still get to work from home, homeschool my kids, and indulge in things that I'm interested in. I'm still confronting my shadow self and doing the work to heal continuously, because healing is continuous work. I have had to confront my fear of failure, understanding that failure doesn't really exist. You can't fail at something that you've never done before. You can only learn the lessons and try again if necessary. And it's a difference between growth and fear. As I approach 40, I've also had to confront my fears of lovelessness and doing life alone. And to be honest, right now, that feels like a reprieve, but I can only assume I might not feel that way forever. So my remedy is not to isolate myself, to get out, meet new people, create new adventures, and maybe a genuine, healthy partnership will come from that. And that feels more exciting than thinking about it in a negative way. I say all this to say, it's never too late to start over. Whether you're 20, 30, 40, or 70, I deserve to become the best version of myself, and so do you, without guilt, shame, or fear. I hope that my story and my journey, as I continue to live it and write new chapters, encourages you to discover your own path, because you're worth it. And that's all for now. Thank you for listening, Village. Until next time, I will see you in the next video /podcast.